Welcome back. This will be part 4 of Mass Effect Jenkins Edition by Night Jane on Royal Road. Alright. Commander Jane Shepard, POV. Jane awoke with a start, breathing heavy and drenched in sweat. They were still exhausted, and it felt as though they had not slept at all. Visions of a massive monster bursting from below the sand, crushing a vehicle that they had been moments from climbing into, still played in her head. A koozie. The nightmare that would... Frick. The nightmare that wouldn't leave her alone, following her even in her sleep. It didn't seem to matter what she did or said. All everyone seemed to care about was that she was a survivor from a koozie. The mission that had her promoted to commander, as if having your entire unit killed qualified you to lead others. She would laugh at the idea if it still didn't terrify her. She was a soldier, a good one, and she could recognize that her training and upbringing made her more than qualified to lead ground teams. She was a powerful biotic. Only in L3, she was a rare exception where her natural powers could compete with even L2s, and with none of the side effects. That combined with her proficiency in weapons made her a force to be reckoned with on the battlefield. Even if she couldn't kill that Thresher Maw, she was still able to scare it off, a feat greater than most. She knew all of this. She could acknowledge each part of it intellectually and understand the brass's reasoning in promoting her, and in Anderson's push to have her aboard the Normandy. Didn't change the fact that she was afraid to lead. She wasn't even in charge, and she had been the only survivor. If she had been in charge on the ground in Kizzy, would things have gone differently? Thoughts like these had raced through her head over the entirety of the past week. The longer it had gone on, the more suspicious she had become that this couldn't just be a dry run. The ship was running a full crew, equipped with a frankly overqualified ground team. Kaidan was an L2 biotic that could compete with her in combat capability, with that could rival her own biotics, and was no slouch in his training. He was a textbook military man, only ranked a lieutenant due to the lack of field experience. He would be a lead on most standard ground teams, and here he was supposed to be following her orders. And then there was Jenkins. She didn't know what to think of Jenkins. He was odd, even by Alliance soldier standards. Seemingly brilliant, but very odd. He worked in a unit below Anderson, just like Kaidan, was hand-selected to be a part of the ground team on this ship. He was the youngest out of any of us, and while he was a gifted engineer, he came off as reckless and inexperienced. Almost as though conflict was some kind of game to him. He was also the worst out of everyone for watching her. Everyone on the ship paid attention whenever Jane was present. She could feel their eyes following her as she went about her various tasks aboard the ship. And Jenkins was by far the worst offender. It didn't make her feel gross or uncomfortable. Unlike others whose eyes were filled with curiosity or pity, Jenkins seemed to stare in awe. It was the same look he gave the ship when he boarded originally, as though she were something he had never imagined to encounter. It wasn't a bad feeling per se, but it was odd. Even with the stories of her missions that got out, it wouldn't explain the fascination, and she had been eyed up by horny soldiers on shore leave before. This was different. It was confusing, and she would need to speak with him more, try to figure out what his deal was. If they were supposed to work together on the ground combat scenarios, he would need to be able to follow orders and take things seriously. She rose from bed, heading to her cabin's private shower to wash the sweat of nightmares from her body. Finishing that, feeling clean, was immediately a better feeling. The grossness of sleep and the memories of her nightmares faded as she dried her hair, letting the crimson color fall down to the top of her shoulders. She dried her face and stared into the mirror for a moment, letting her eyes wander across her face. She left the koozie, not just alive, but unscarred. Not an ounce of evidence of the life-threatening experiences she had gone through marked her. She opened the mirror cabinet, removing her eyeliner, a gift from her mother, and the only makeup she would ever wear. It was an intimidation technique, her mother said. Make her eyes pop more distinctly. had her appear more aggressive than she might otherwise. She hadn't really used it very often, but in the week since Akuzi, she had found it being much more effective to side-eye annoying journalists while wearing it. So, it had found a way into her regular wardrobe. Her mom was deployed currently aboard the SSV Kilimanjaro, and while after Akuzi she took a week off to support her daughter, she was back to work shortly after. They tried to call and speak when they could, but communications got tough when working through the Attican Traverse and Terminus system. Still, Jane loved her mother. Having that support had been everything, and had kept her sane more than once during her military career. She would message her after their mission today, fill her in on what happened. Jane reached into the closet, clasping open and sliding into her N7 armor, gear she had gone through hell to earn, and which had saved her life more than once. Ensuring everything fit and was sealed properly, she took out the second to double-check her Omni tool. The larger extension protruding from the end was a device designed by Jenkins. One she had been cautious to equip at first. However, after hearing Anderson's praise and seeing that both Caden and Jenkins were using it without difficulty, she gave in. Her biggest praise was for how unintrusive it was. Didn't change her gear layout or settings. It operated exactly as it had before, and that's what she liked. Seems Jenkins follows one code of military doctrine as well, and that's to keep it simple, stupid. She smiled lightly as she finished equipping the gear, thinking of all the over-the-top, expensive upgrades military brass have tried to institute before, just to have a soldier reject the overcomplicated BS in favor of what worked. She turned off the lights and made her way out of her room. The hallway of bunks for ground teams was relatively empty. Only 3 of the rooms were in use, including her own, so that the space didn't get much traffic. As she moved through, she came out into the common area, empty of people. Everyone was likely already up and beginning work. But that was okay. Commander Shepard's role was to lead the ground teams on missions and follow the orders of Captain Anderson. Being up bright and early, thankfully, wasn't part of the mission set just yet. That being said, it doesn't make a good impression to be late to work. Fashionably late makes an impression, but at a certain point, it's just being late. Quickly grabbing a protein bar and scarfing it down, Jane made her way up the steps and onto the deck of the ship. She marches quickly and effectively, dodging crew as they work past her, and she makes her way up to the cockpit of the ship as Joker's voice rings over the ship's intercom. The Arcturus Prime relay is in range, preparing transmission sequence. Shepard gives the navigator Presley a nod as she walks past, headed towards the only view outside aboard the ship. We are connected. Calculating transmission mass and destination. The relay is hot. Acquiring approach vector. All stations are secure for transit. Shepard falls into step behind the pilot's seat, standing next to the Turian Spectre, Nihilus. He gives a curt nod before turning his attention to the structure visible out the window of the MassEffect relay. The structure is large, floating freely in the vacuum of space. It featured 2 large discs floating in line with 2 long, pointed prongs nearly 15 kilometers in length and pointed into the vastness of space. As their ship begins to approach alongside the structure, those large metal rings begin to spin, generating the recognizable blue glow that marks the MassEffect field. The board is green. Approach run has begun, hitting the relay in 3, 2, 1. As Joker begins the countdown, the energy generated by the structure reaches out, enveloping the ship. As he reaches 1, space bends, and in a single moment, the Normandy travels thousands of light years. The transition is barely noticeable. Unlike unassisted light speed travel, relay jumps are near instantaneous, traveling a predetermined path across space in moments. The discovery of these relays are the events that propelled almost every species aboard the Citadel into intersolar civilizations. They are fundamental to all galactic civilizations and are necessary for travel between colonized worlds. The relays we had arrived at wasn't far from our destination, Eden Prime. Thruster check, navigation check, internal emissions sync engaged. All systems online. Drift just under 15K. Joker says idly, reaching over the information of the ship's console is feeding him after the relay jump. 1500 is good. Your captain will be pleased, is Nihilus's only response as he turns to leave the cockpit, giving Jane another nod, which she returns before he leaves. I hate that guy. Joker turns towards Cadian as he gives him the remark just as Nihilus steps out of view. Nihilus gave you a compliment, so you hate him? Caden says, sitting at the console to Joker's right, asks the question, clearly incredulous at his pilot's reaction. You remember to zip your jumpsuit up on the way to the bathroom? That's good. I just jumped us halfway across the galaxy and hit the target the size of a pinhead, so that's incredible. Besides, Spectres are trouble. I don't like having on board. Call me paranoid. Joker's personality shines through yet again. He's a damn good pilot, but as his nickname suggests, he's got an attitude problem. One that keeps him in trouble more often than not. You're paranoid. The council helped fund this project. They have the right to send someone to keep an eye on their project. Cadian, again, jumps to the Spectre's defense. A good soldier, but a little too strong a faith in an institution like the council. There are plenty of moments where selfish or foolhardy decisions get made by those institutions in the name of greed. Yeah, that is the official story, but only an idiot would believe the official story. Again, Joker's attitude and approach is improper for any member of the Alliance Navy. But he's not completely wrong in his assessment either. They don't send Spectres on shakedown runs. Jane chooses her word carefully, enough to let Caden know not to trust the initial mission belief without stepping out of line or questioning said orders. She has experience in finding ways to let her opinions known without stepping on the toes of those who rather she didn't. So, there's more going on here than the captain is letting on. And yet again, Joker shatters the illusion of subtlety, speaking his mind with no care for etiquette. And as if on cue, Captain Anderson's voice comes through the pilot's comm terminal, a private channel. Joker, status report. His voice rings out clear and to the point, and if Jane can hear correctly, sounding a little frustrated. Just cleared the mass relay, Captain. Stealth systems engaged. Everything looks solid. As a point in Joker's favor, his reply matches the captain's tone, leaving it short, simple, and to the point. Good. Find a convoy and link us onto the network. I want mission reports relayed back to the Alliance brass before we reach Eden Prime. Aye aye, Captain. Better brace yourself, sir. I think Nihilus is headed your way. Not one to keep things fully professional, Joker just has to get in one last remark, much to his detriment. He's already here, Lieutenant. Tell Commander Shepard to meet me in the comm room for a debriefing. As the captain cuts off, Jane begins to feel concerned. While the captain was definitely upset at something, it wasn't just Joker's comment. Something else is going on. You get that, Commander? Joker doesn't bother to turn his head when he asks, knowing full well Jane was still standing behind his chair. I'm on my way. She keeps her response short, turning to make her way to the comm room before she even finishes. As she walks away, she can hear Joker and Caden talking. Is it me, or does the captain always sound a little pissed off? She can hear him asking Caden. Only when he's talking to you, Joker. Caden's response is quick, and Shepard has to suppress a chuckle as she walks away. Heading down the walkway towards the car room, she can see Presley standing at the edge of the line of consoles that makes up the galaxy map, apparently in a heated discussion. She overhears him speak with Engineer Adams over the comms, arguing about the role of Nihilus on this mission and how Presley believes him to be up to something. That is, until Adam tells him to calm down before he gets another ulcer. As Jean approaches, Presley cuts off the comms to speak with her. They talk shortly, and he eventually fills her in on his concerns. Presley doesn't believe there's any chance that this mission is just a shakedown run to test Normandy's stealth systems. All the things from the ship's full crew to the Spectre on board to the ship's captain being one of the most decorated officers in the Alliance means there has to be more to it. His major fear seems to be that Spectre has hijacked our ship for their own mission of some sort. Eventually, he admits this fear is more a grudge he has against Turians from First Contact War than anything grounded in reality. Jane sinks in the information she picked up and was glad to have more conversation outside herself and Joker that didn't feel right about this mission. Something wasn't right, and she was going to ensure that Captain Anderson filled her in on what was going on. If this mission was supposed to be far more dangerous than she had been informed, then she deserved to know. She wouldn't let happen on a cruise happen to her ground team. That will be all for part 4. Hope everyone has a great day, night, whenever you are listening to this. Please like, comment, subscribe, and check out the original author on Royal Road, linked down below. Have a good one. Cheers.